So now moving ahead, we have a second speaker for the day, Dr. Naveen Pandey. Dr. Naveen Pandey is a veterinary science from University of Edinburgh. He is the Deputy Director and Veterinary Advisor to the Corbett Foundation. He is also the Faculty of Conservation Medicine in University of Edinburgh. His eminent works and researches are on landscape epidemiology, connectivity conservation, and conservation of social science. He has been involved in designing education programs for children residing in rural areas and working with the theme Healthy People, Healthy Lifestyle. He researched on livings of tribal people and their culture and has written many popular writings on human-wildlife conflict and flood management. So I would welcome Dr. Naveen Pandey to enlighten us.
Hi, thanks, Dhruv. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
And can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me for today's conference. And I really appreciate the initiative taken up by your institute. I will be speaking about conservation story in Northeast India. I'm based in the Northeast for last 2 decades. And currently I'm staying at Kaziranga, next to Kaziranga National Park, and I've been involved in wildlife conservation on day-to-day basis. Today, when I was driving at 5 in the morning for participating in some of the programs for Environment Day event, I could see that people were planting trees in villages, and these photographs are from today's event. The most interesting part is that the villagers were doing it by themselves. So it was not an institutional effort. And you will wonder, like most of you might have been to the Northeast, but those who haven't visited yet, I'd like to tell you that it's absolutely green. It's very, very green, greener than green actually. And then you will wonder, why would people go for further plantations? I mean, it's a biodiversity hotspot. It's very, very rich. And despite that, I could see a strong urge in the people to go for plantations. So what we people, going to colleges and institutions, we learn these villagers, they have been living with nature for hundreds of years. And I believe that they have got very strong knowledge of strong linkage between plants and animals and ecosystem and all that, what we study in colleges. So they know that biodiversity is very strongly connected with plant community. And the plant community will determine the biological diversity of any ecosystem, because it is the plants community which provides basis for life for the animals in the ecosystem. So this heterogeneity, it's very important, and villagers in the Northeast, they totally understand it. And when we talk about plants, actually, then the villagers, they also know that plant species generally exist in association with each other. So if that composition is altered, it will also alter the composition of the animals which are dependent on those plants, and ultimately the entire ecosystem will change. So the people in Northeast are strongly for regeneration of forest and plantations. Now, despite that, actually, we knew that the forest cover is declining in Northeast India. Actually, the decline in forests in Northeast India is far greater than other parts of the country. So why it happens? I mean, there is a dichotomy in the conservation efforts of the community and conservation efforts of the government. So that reflects in the overall situation of forests. So this is again from today. Now, if we talk about the Northeast India, it's composed of 8 states. Apart from the 7 sisters, Sikkim is also included. And geographically, this area is like it's a junction of Indo-Malaya, Indo-China, Indo-Myanmar, and Indo-Bangladesh. And it also joins with the foothills of Himalayan mountains. So there is immense variety of the climatic and altitudinal variations, and that gives rise to a huge degree of variation for different species to survive in Northeast India. And that's why, like, we are in the Indo-Burma hotspot. When we say hotspot, that also includes a danger of losing rapidly many species from the ecosystem because of exploitation or because of lack of concern for nature conservation. So this is about Northeast India, and I'll be speaking about Kaziranga National Park. But as we can see in this map, even Assam has got 5 national parks and wildlife sanctuaries and 4 tiger reserves. So it looks quite rich, but slowly over a period of time, there is a very rapid fragmentation of the habitat. People are expanding in population, and their needs are changing, and that is reflecting in the pressure on the wild areas. The sanctity of the wild areas is rapidly being lost. That's like many of you would know where Kaziranga is, but I have put up this image thinking that if anybody has any doubt, then you will know that it's in Assam, and now it is spread in 5 different districts of Assam, and it covers around 860 square kilometer of area. And Brahmaputra flows through the park actually, and this Kaziranga is a floodplain made by the Brahmaputra over hundreds of years. That's the conservation story of Kaziranga. I won't go into the detail, but the crux is that around 100 years ago, we had hardly 20 odd rhinos left in this park. And now today we have more than 2,400 rhinos. So it's one of the biggest successful conservation stories anywhere on this planet. Kaziranga has shown how a species can be brought back from extinction directly into its natural habitat. So that's what this shows. And the lower table shows you like how the Kaziranga National Park has increased its area so that more and more area could be protected adjoining to the core area. It's a variety of habitats. You can see that half of it is grassland, and then we have around 6 to 7% of wetlands. Marshy areas are there. So for each habitat, we have different species. So if we talk about the 3 levels of biodiversity, we have got huge genetic diversity. Now, if we talk about lions, then we know that they are losing their genetic diversity because they are confined in a place, and then we know that variance is needed for any healthy population. If we talk about species diversity, then Kaziranga is super rich with many species. And then ecosystem diversity is there because we have got grasslands and river ecosystem and woodland. So it's a perfect blend for a huge biodiverse area to sustain. If we look about flora of Kaziranga, so we have some more than 700 species of plants. Ficus, of course, we have got ficus everywhere, more than 21 species here, and huge number of aquatic herbs. So you see, if you want to create a wetland, it's not about digging the soil and filling it up with water, right? It's about creating that whole micro ecosystem with many varieties of aquatic herbs which different species will like to relish upon. And we have 60% of elephant grass. So that provides a lot of fodder for herbivores. And there is exotic species, mimosa, of course, which is a concern for Kaziranga. I'll go to the next slide, but I'll just like to know if I'm still audible or not. Hello?
Audible.
Okay, thank you. Should I continue?
Yes, sir.
Right. And then we have got a large number of animals of various species, and some of them are very rare, like Gangetic dolphin, Bengal florican, eastern swamp deer. They are less than 1,100 in number now. Bengal florican population will be less than 200 throughout the country, I guess. And it's World Heritage Site. And of course, we have got rhinos, tigers, and elephants, and wild buffaloes, etc. So if we look at the avian diversity, more than 540 species of birds, and then most of them would have different habitat requirement. So Kaziranga is able to fulfill enough food for, say, like birds which feed on marsh areas and birds which will feed on insects. Some birds would need carcass, like the vultures, whereas some birds will need wood trees actually to make holes and stay there. Like you can see the different species, and for each one of them they have got a different niche actually. So Kaziranga has got that different layers of niche. We can attract different varieties of species, and that adds to the beauty of this park. If you look at the snakes, huge diversity of snakes. We have red-necked keelback, king cobra, banded krait, Burmese python, monocle cobra, and many others. Similarly, if we look at turtles and tortoise, some 17 species are there, and then we have Bengal monitor, etc. Now, when you have got such a huge diversity, you have got different challenges. So these are some of the challenges which Kaziranga Park faces. I'll go one by one. But to address the challenges, the Kaziranga Park has adopted a model wherein various stakeholders are identified and they are engaged in the conservation of the whole landscape. So if you look at habitat degradation, now we know that Kaziranga is a floodplain and Brahmaputra floods every year. So because of that, there is very serious soil erosion. We have lost around 90 square kilometer of area in last decade in Kaziranga Park. And then there are invasive species of plants like mimosa and eichhornia. And then park undertakes annual burning of grasses. And because of that, Bombyx ceiba gets an upper hand. This is the red silk cotton, Bombyx ceiba. And then grasslands are being rapidly converted to woodlands. Now, conversion of grasslands into woodland is a natural process. That will happen. But because of our intervention, that process is getting sped up. And then siltation of wetlands is taking place because a lot of mining goes on the Karbi Hills in the south of Kaziranga. And when it rains heavily, then a lot of silt and mud comes into the park and it will fill up the wetlands. So the overall water holding capacity of the wetlands will go down, and that will affect in the water availability in dry seasons for most of the species. Now, if we look at human-wildlife interface, that's a 1987 GIS map. You can see the distribution of human settlements, and you compare that with the lower map, which is from 2008. And then you will see that the human settlements have gone terribly up and up. Agricultural fields have gone down. Now, agricultural fields will allow animals to move. So in these two maps, on the north, up there, you can see the park, whereas on the south of that road, the middle part, we have Karbi Anglong Hills, where the animals have to migrate during flood time to avoid getting drowned. So because of this, the corridors are getting choked, and because of this, a lot of wild animals and human people, they come in close confrontation of each other. Now, this is, I've included some 7-8 species of animals which I got in camera traps in a village. So this is a village very close to the park where these animals were spotted, and they mix up very closely with the livestock and the animals. So because of this, the conflict has increased. A lot of livestock are killed by tigers, and for them we need projects. So when elephants are depreding crops, then we have a project wherein the people could be helped to design suitable lookout points from where they could guard their crops. They could use these torchlights and push the elephants back into their forested area, and direct conflict could be avoided. Through this contact, we can avoid those incidents wherein farmers take up the lethal route to protect their crops. Similarly, if we look at the large cat and the human beings conflict, you can see that this hut, the left portion in this hut, has been designed and modified to keep their cattle safely. So that is one way of protecting the crop, protecting the animals, livestock, so that people don't kill wild animals. The animal population is going up inside the Kaziranga Park. As I said, now the rhino population is 2,400 plus. Similarly, the wild buffalo population has gone up. The other herbivores like hog, deer population has gone up. So if the park area doesn't increase, where these animals are going to go? Now that's a big challenge for the park authority. Annual flooding, I'll just quickly show you some photographs of flooded Kaziranga. The first one is an anti-poaching camp inside the park. You can see it's getting flooded. The middle image shows a hut, a villager's hut, which is getting flooded. The bottom image is from the park, wherein some 4 or 5 rhinos have taken shelter on a small patch of natural highland. Now, before the flood, a lot of activities are taken up so that people don't kill wild animals and they can protect themselves as well as wildlife. Now, the park has made some highlands inside the park. Similarly, the Corbett Foundation has made some highlands for villagers outside the park. But then these highlands are not the answer for natural highlands actually. The animal should be able to move up to Karbi Anglong Hills, which are the natural highlands, and it's the choking of the corridors which is creating problem. And jhum cultivation in Karbi Hills is a big challenge because it's damaging the habitat. And Karbi Hills being an autonomous area, the protection for wildlife is very, very poor, and it's not a part of Kaziranga Tiger Reserve. At present, the Forest Department is trying to make it a part of Kaziranga Tiger Reserve, but the process is very slow, and there are many political angles to this effort. And poaching of wildlife, poaching cases have gone down in last 3-4 years, and many poachers have been arrested. And these arrests show actually why the poaching cases have gone down, because people were arrested before they could commit the crime. Look at the investment that the park makes. Almost more than 10 crore rupees is spent every year. 1,300 people are guarding Kaziranga. Every inch is protected by guns, and a lot of bad news also comes about misuse of guns, but those reports are fake. Actually, they are not true. The patrolling party of Kaziranga National Park, they are passionate about the park and they give their best actually. I was looking at M. Krishnan's Nature Spokesman, a nice book I will recommend everyone to read. And on page number 162, he wrote, in 1973, he wrote that dedicated work in protecting the animals from poachers resulted in gradual increase in its number, and now it is definitely saved in Assam. Now remember that rhino is a very slow breeding animal when compared to elephants. So Assam has done something which many other states can probably follow. Now that's about the corridors. Many corridors are choked. Animals are getting it very harder and harder to cross the highway to go to the south of the highway, like to Karbi Hills, which are the natural highlands. You can see in this image that now the Forest Department makes best efforts to ensure that animals get enough time during the flood time to cross the highway and go on the other side. We are also running a conservation education project which aims on 4 different components. I will not go into the details of this, but you can see the map actually. That's the park and that's the national highway going in the red color. And the dots are the areas where we are organizing these educational programs. So we can see some of the images. So University of Edinburgh is a partner in this program, wherein we organize risk assessment meetings with the villagers to know actually what they perceive, because our perception is different. We don't actually face the challenges, whereas the villagers, they know their situation better. So it's better to include them into decision-making process. So that's what is going on here. We have created a lot of awareness materials which goes into the villages in the local language. Now these are in English because I wanted to put it up here, but then for the people it's in vernacular language actually. Recently we had African swine fever, for which posters were circulated in villages, because African swine fever can infect wild boars inside the park as well. We ran a rescue program wherein we have rescued so far more than 3,500 animals. The upper one is a critically endangered Bengal florican female, which was tied up under a bed by a farmer. We rescued at midnight and we were able to release it back into the wild. And there are many other animals which come through this project. The park also includes different stakeholders in ecological surveys. That's very important. Rather than closing the doors, actually it opens up the park for researchers from various institutions, from social sciences background, as well as from the media groups, etc., so that there is more transparency. And if the park can adopt this approach, there are other areas in Northeast which can probably undertake this as well. This creates a lot of goodwill building for the park. And this is my last slide. I think Kaziranga is heavily protected, but conservation outside protected area is equally important. And even if outside the protected area, if we can include the community, we can identify the stakeholders, it will greatly help in conserving those areas. And we have to use modern tools for conservation. Remote sensing, GIS should be included along with the field data. And social sciences should be given enough weightage in deciding conservation efforts, because ultimately it's a society which is getting affected either way, this way or that way, because of conservation. So the social metrics, social norms, social values should be compulsory for biodiversity conservation in Northeast India. Thank you very much. I hope I have finished in time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your session. There is a question from Ishita Goyal. Is construction of national parks and sanctuary a way to conserve wildlife? Why is the thinking and perspective of people not being changed regarding environment if it is being done? What are the initiatives of yours?
Well, I will try to understand the question. I think the question is that when for protecting wildlife, natural parks have been built up, then why not for environment? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for putting it up. I guess, see, the Wildlife Protection Act came in 1972, and Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister then. She probably understood about wildlife, and that's why we have Wildlife Protection Act. Now you need a political leadership who thinks that environment is also important, and it's all about political will and political leadership. There is no second thought. It's not the public which decides actually, because even when the Project Tiger came or Indian Wildlife Protection Act came, it was the political leadership which decided in favor of conservation of wildlife. So I think that probably the young youth of this country, if they can show up to the political leadership that environment could be an issue for them to consider, then only I can see some way, otherwise it's difficult.